Good morning, everybody. Thanks for making it through the blizzard to talk about clean energy jobs, which is the big unfinished business for us in 2019, and therefore the big to-do for 2020. So, my name is Lindsey Scholten. I'm the Political Director for the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. I'm going to talk, not very much, which is good, because my voice is not all here. I'm mostly just going to introduce our wonderful panelists, have a conversation about what happened with energy jobs, why it's still the best path for Oregon, and then we're going to open it up for questions and kind of just have a discussion with all of you. I also wanted to start by saying that right now we may have this huge unfinished business, but the activism around climate is unprecedented. I don't know if people were part of the climate marches. In Oregon, we had over 20,000 people in marches in 19 cities across the state. So, the activism is that. So first up, I'm going to pass it off to Representative Karin.
Thanks for joining us. I will try to be as uplifting about our last largest piece of bills and work in the 2019 session that didn't pass at 9:54 in the morning on a Sunday after a jam-packed evening full of a lot of events. And first I want to recognize two of my colleagues, also in the room, Representative Pam Marsh, who's standing against the wall from Action. And I'll come back to why I love Pam working with me on this and when the Metro and Southern Oregon flanks on our work. And then Representative Ramos, also who helped champion this process. So I don't know how many of you follow this super closely during session? Okay, awesome. Thank you for being here with us on this. So I want to say I've had a couple conversations with people already who feel terrified about the climate and are so worried about where we're going. And I want to let you know I hear you, I'm so there with you. But please understand there's been so much work done collectively around this past year. Oregon is falling behind, but we are not alone in taking on this work. And I want to touch on some great strides that have been made around the country to show what is possible. Other states leading in different ways that we were unable to because of the Republican walkout. But first, let's remind each other, who thinks that there's a current climate crisis happening right now? Great. So we should do something about it, right? Right. The legislature in 2007, more than 10 years ago, set climate reduction goals, knowing what we knew was coming down the pipe needed to be our portion of our reduction goals, so that we could meet the reductions below 1990 levels that scientists have been telling us for literally decades, since before I was born, that we needed to do. Here we are today, and we're already seeing the impacts of temperature rises above 2 degrees C, including in some parts of Oregon. This is also not rocket science. We've made transitions towards fossil fuels, towards towards clean energy strides over the last decade or so in ways that I think 2 decades ago most of us sitting in a room like this who care about the environment would not think were possible. So, how did we get to this session? And how does a program like a Cap and Invest program differ from what other states have done? I'm going to walk you through a little bit of wonky history, so bear with me. I'll try to keep it as high level, but some of you might know I literally carried the bill for 6.5 hours on the House floor. In June, so it is hard for me to keep it a little bit higher level because as we are currently thinking ahead, you're back right into the very, very granular policy details. So if you know nothing about ways to tackle climate, most scientists and economists advocate pricing it. Just the way you price a tax on any kind of city tax, you want to discourage alcohol use or tobacco use, you put a tax on it, use those things to get people off of those things. It's basically the same idea around carbon pricing. And there have been 2 different ways to do it that most different jurisdictions and countries are approaching it. One is to put a flat carbon tax on it, and the other is to use a market-based approach, where the market helps set the price, but you say everybody starts here, we're going to go down here, we're going to give you permits to purchase so you can continue emitting carbon, and then those are going to reduce over time. So the price will go up, and at some point, people will reduce their use. And they can make individual business decisions as companies around whether they want to accelerate and, switch to LED light bulbs, so they're using this energy now, or later on when more technology may be available for other types of processes that they do. Allows companies to trade with each other. So it's a little bit outside the market. In 2016, and I should let you know that pretty much every year, every other year, there was either a governor effort or a legislative bill since 2007 trying to put teeth into the overarching policy goals that we already have on the books. In 2016, the state finally put some money behind it, and we commissioned DEQ to do a study for us and determine whether Oregon would benefit most from a flat carbon tax or a cap and trade policy approach the way that California had adopted, that other Canadian provinces had adopted, and that others were looking to. And DEQ came back with a pretty robust economic study and said linking to a larger effort for Oregon, we're geographically large, but most of our population lives along I-5, would be better for our economy and would be more effective because we'd link in with a broader effort and we'd be able to learn from what they'd already done. So we took that learning in 2017 and we've been working on bills ever since. So the failure of House Bill 2020, the Clean Energy Jobs Bill, this past June was infuriating. And if you're mad, I am so mad as well. I was hoping a couple months go by and I'd be less mad. But, thanks, Donna. Still mad. Our house passed it 36 to 24. We passed a tax-proof bill, so there was an argument that it was a tax, a hidden tax. We passed it with enough votes that if that court challenge would come up, we would have met it. That's how many of my House Democrats were for this bill. We lost a few, as you know, if you didn't count that. We had 38 members. So where are we today? I don't think a lot has changed in Oregon's economic system in the last few years that would warrant a massive different approach. But I think what we saw over the last session is this is a deeply, deeply partisan issue. And it's getting more partisan at the federal level as Trump is literally hiding reports, having his top agency brass tell scientists they can't speak out on these things. I mean, we're literally to the point where former agency staff are thinking about putting out alternative factual reports because what's coming from the Trump administration is so politically motivated. So, I want to talk a little bit ahead about what happened in the interim. Give you a little bit of hope. If you follow this as closely as I did, I'm going to highlight the work of 3 different states that happened as we were trying to get this over the finish line in the 2019 session. New York, Colorado, and New Mexico all passed really strong climate bills with stronger interim targets that Oregon has currently on the books. And one of them passed with a net zero by 100% reduction, net zero by 2050. I got to meet a colleague of mine in New York who worked on their bill, and I said, gosh, it's a great bill. Talks a lot about economic justice, climate justice, investments going to impact communities. Our bill in New York's were probably the most alike out of the nation working on this past session. And I said, God, how did you guys get over the finish line? It must have been, just a flurry of work. And she goes, yeah, it's been 20 years of work. It's been 20 years of work with dedicated, passionate people like you leaning into this issue. And they were able to carry the ball down the field a little bit further than we were this past session. Colorado and New Mexico passed ambitious goals, but don't have nearly the same level of policy and research that Oregon has done over the last decade to get them there. So they've got great points to aim for, and they're still going to be looking to us and to other states to figure out how they make that transition. So we have a 100-page bill that we left with, and a huge body of work that economic reports have indicated would be good for Oregon as soon as we start making this transition. And If you follow this super close, you know that the piece that is going to continue to be hardest for us is around transportation. We benefit as a state from hydroelectric energy. A lot of our grid mix is already moving towards clean energy, though we could be moving faster. The hard part is, how many of us have cars that are older than 10 years? Yeah. We have reliable cars that work just fine. Most people don't make a major purchase every 10 to 15 years. We tend to hang on to something for a while as a car like that. We should be buying our next cars as electric cars or as alternative fuel vehicles. That's really what we should be doing next. But it's really difficult to talk about increasing the price of that vehicle that gets you to your job every day, drops your kid off at childcare. And so cost of transportation, increasing cost of transportation is something that affects all sectors of our economy. I want to recognize that this is a part that people were deeply afraid of this past session. And there was a lot of fear and misunderstanding around what our climate action plan was going to do and what it wouldn't have done. The folks who came down in their trucks and in their other vehicles and circled the Capitol and grew into the timber unity movement were deeply afraid that this bill was going to put them out of work. And that is sort of intentional fear and disinformation campaign. Really rips, I think, at the fabric of our democracy. When you people come down to protest around something that is not true in a bill, but they are afraid for their jobs and their livelihoods and their way of life, we need to figure out how to talk about that across those political aisles. So, while we didn't finish this session, I'm incredibly encouraged by the fact that our East Coast counterparts, of which there are far more working together. There's 12 states on the East Coast, and now North Carolina is thinking about joining that coalition, and Pennsylvania, despite a Republican-controlled legislature, has a Democratic governor who is planning to join in on that effort by executive order. An incredibly bold effort. You'll see their editorials are much like the same ones against Governor Brown's own EO considerations. It's a huge coalition of states, and it's a huge part of our population in this country, and they have a plan to tackle climate and transportation costs too. They came up with a transportation framework just a few weeks ago, and they'll be leaning in over the next 2 years to figure out a way to phase in transportation into their own climate reduction goals. And my hope is we're going to keep on carrying this ball down the finish line. One of us is going to get there. California already has, but together, the full weight of all of us working together and leaning in on this is something to be incredibly proud of and to take heart on. No state alone is going to solve this problem until we get a better federal administration who backs us up and recognizes that you can't deny climate science is already here. So we'll be working on this again in the short session. It is our top priority as House Democrats. I have not had a single call from one of my colleagues saying that they would not run back up this hill again. But I have to say this too, if you are not following Tiffany Mitchell's recall efforts along the coast, please do. Send her a card, send her some money, because the dark money that works against us in politics is banking on the fact that running against one of our more moderate districts and trying to pick off one of my colleagues who's a deeply good human being and very passionate about climate and can already see the effects of climate along the North Coast might get some of my colleagues to rethink their yes votes, honestly. Tiffany's recall efforts are being done because she was a yes on the clean energy job sale. It wasn't about students and it wasn't about the others. It's really coming down to our climate work. And I'm all in for her. As soon as she's up and running again, we'll be outdoor knocking for her if it gets to that point. But if you were here yesterday morning, you know it's a very low signature threshold for her recall petition campaign. And she could really use all of our support. So hop on Facebook and social media, let her know we have her back. Because this is a team effort together. We've had a huge coalition behind us, and I want to turn that over to everybody else too, and we continue to champion our efforts together. But we need to have each other's backs on this, and also move forward as a team. I'm really excited. We have Steve's behind us. We'll get this done. It might take another walk out or stuff, but I'm here. Okay, thank you.
Next up, we are going to hear a little bit more about this great coalition that is behind it. We'll have Reyna Lopez from PCUN, Executive Director. Good, come on. Oh. Yeah, sure, that would be great.
Hey folks, how's it going? Awesome. I'm Reyna Lopez, the Executive Director of PCUN, Oregon's Farm Worker Union. We represent farm workers and tree planters in the Northwest. Also, we represent generally Latinx working families, and as everyone in this room already knows, climate change is not a hypothetical situation. We believe that we can get this done if we have a broad coalition, a deep coalition. This is why farm workers decided to step up. This is why the immigrant rights movement has decided to step up, because we're already seeing that people are coming here at the intersection of immigration and climate change. Just in the community that I grew up in Salem, Oregon, folks from the Marshallese community have seen their islands disappear. So that's just one example. But for us, we know that we have to be a strong voice for frontline communities. I mean, I've heard the stats, 12 years, if we don't do something, things are going to be really bad. But for some communities, it's already bad today. And that's really the voice that we're trying to bring to the table. And for farm workers specifically, we know that the life expectancy of a migrant farm worker is 49 years of age. And this is because of the chemical exposure, this is because of carbon that we're breathing every single day, this is because of the safety and hazardous conditions out in the workplace, and because now we have another extra thing, especially for our forestry workers, wildfires. So for us in Woodburn specifically, and I know that some people in the room worked on the Covanta campaign, I have to drive by Covanta every single day and see the carbon that literally is going out into our air, into a majority Latinx municipality. And for us, making sure that we're creating that story too, so that that people see it's not just environmentalists that are out here wanting to care about these issues, that there are people that are literally seeing the effects every single day, and they have a story to tell about the human effects. So we also talked a lot about this with our members, and one of the members that really stood out for me, his story is Javier Ceja. He's been a farm worker his whole life. He comes from Michoacan, and also generations of farm workers there, and has said that back in Michoacan, a lot of the land is actually unfarmable now because of the changes in the climate, the changes in the rain and the season. And those are big effects that have affected people back home, and we see parallels to what we're seeing here in Oregon today. We need a cap, and for PCUN, that has been one of our bottom lines. We want to see real milestones, we want to see something that we can measure, we want to see this thing get capped, but at the same time, we also want to see investments. And we know that even lessons from California, that some communities get left behind if they're not at the table. And so that has been our goal always, to bring the voice of the farm workers, bring the voice of the people that sometimes gets forgotten and sometimes doesn't get heard in these big, big policies. And so the investment has been a focal point for equity, especially for us, and making sure that people aren't forgotten, that tribal communities aren't forgotten, that farm workers aren't forgotten, that immigrants aren't forgotten, people of color, low-income people, people at that whole intersection, people in rural communities. So that has been a very important voice to bring to the table, especially around CEJ. We know that this is going to make a difference. Maria Zavala, a Latina in California, saw a big difference, specifically in her utility bill, in the costs. If you don't care about anything else, think about what this would mean for cost savings for low-income people. There was a program that would actually allow her to get her solar panels installed for basically no cost. It was a low-income program, and her utility bill literally went from $200 a month to $1.50 a month.
Wow.
This is real money, and when it comes to having to make real choices every single day between putting food on your kid's table and paying your utility bill, and also getting to make a difference in what's happening in our communities, you can't question these stats and these numbers. Also, one of the big conversations that we've been trying to bring to the table is also modeled off of some of the work that happened in California, kind of a cash clunkers idea, where we could actually cash in some of the old equipment that's being used in the fields in agriculture to be able to bring in new equipment. There were farm workers down in California through one of our partner organizations, UFW. We've heard some of these stories that they were able to electrify completely all their car pools. And for any folks who work in agriculture, usually the workers all go out there in a big old van, and a lot of us just get out there together. If we could electrify that, not only is that better for our environment, but also our workers are paying a little bit less to get out to work. In addition to ensuring that we could potentially also have tractors, we could have equipment out there that is less carbon emitting, because a lot of our folks are getting to breathe that every single day. And for us, not only is that better for us as workers, but it could also be good for the aesthetic and the work environment in general out there. So these are some of the framings that we're bringing to the table, and I think that they're very important. In terms of the ballot measure, how many of y'all have seen the ballot measures that have come out? Awesome. Okay, so a lot of folks in the room have heard a little bit about this. I mean, I think that for us, we're going to be throwing down on the ballot measures and really supporting that. But as we know, ballot measures are a very harsh way of making policy. So this work that we have been doing to really focus on ensuring that there's a just transition for the people that are really on the margins of some of these issues is a lot harder to do. We want to make sure that these investments can actually go to the communities that would be affected the most. I think that especially when we talk about environmental justice, we know that lessons from the past, right, that if we don't intentionally include folks in the conversation, they're going to get left behind. So I think that still making sure that CEJ happens in the session where people can come to the table and have real conversations is still the best way to do this. And I would say that I'm really proud of this, especially. I'm a huge fan of the coalitions that we've been able to build in Oregon. It's actually really unique and really special what we've been able to do here. And when we have broad and deep coalitions, we actually win good stuff. So one of the relationships that I think I'm the proudest of here is really the relationships that we've been able to build with the tribes. And I think that Don Sampson has, I don't know if he's here at all at the conference, but him being able to bring in all the tribes is something that I've never really been able to see in a lot of the campaigns that I've worked in the past. So for me, farm workers, tribes, folks at the table over here, it's something that we need to have, and it needs to get a lot deeper. And I mean, for that to happen, we need to continue to be in alignment with each other and remember that ultimately we want the same thing, right? We want to make sure that our state is on the right path to making sure our environment is good for the future and generations to come. And we need to listen to the young people too, because I've been seeing them being the most fiercest advocates for this, and it's real, and a lot of the stress that's happening, especially with our young folks, comes from a lot of what is going to happen in the future on our environment. So thank you so much for having me here today, a pleasure.
Thank you, Reyna. So next up, we're going to hear a little bit about how much support there really is from everyday Oregonians, and we're going to hear a little bit about how we're going to talk about this. And so to do that, we have Dave Metz, who is All-Star Pollster. Is your official title, right?
Yes, official, yeah.
Yep. And so he's going to dive in to some of the polling that's been done here in Oregon, as well as maybe a little bit from around the country on climate.
All right. Thank you, Lindsey. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I think everyone has done a good job so far of setting the table about what is happening in the Capitol and sort of at a grassroots and grassroots level with organizing around climate action here in Oregon. But what I want to do is look at the public opinion picture, because I I think a lot of the discussions about where Oregonians are on this legislation are shaped by media, are shaped by insiders, and don't really reflect necessarily where the broader public is. And in fact, what we've seen in our research since the session ended is no diminishment whatsoever in public concern about climate change or support for the suite of policy solutions that were part of HB 2020. So we are still beginning with a very broad foundation of public support here in Oregon. Obviously, if that were enough, we would have legislation in place on this. Obviously, you have to be mindful of the political tactics that need to happen to get the ball over the finish line. But I think what we'll see in the data here is there's a lot that we have to work with to help make the public's voices a little bit better heard as we try to get this legislation passed. So I'm going to walk through a couple of findings of the poll we conducted at the beginning of August after session, where we talked to just over 600 voters statewide. We asked them a series of questions that we've asked in previous polls around climate change in Oregon to try to understand the degree to which opinion either was or was not changing among the broader public as a result of what happened earlier this year. So first, this is a question that we put in a lot of our polls where we offer respondents a list of issues facing Oregon, and we ask them to rate their level of concern with these problems, labeling each as either extremely, very, somewhat, or not too serious. And you'll see total on the right-hand side the proportion that labeled each of these issues an extremely or very serious problem in August of this year. So the thing to look at here is first, what's number one on the list? The risk of wildfires. As I will show you in a minute, that number has skyrocketed over the course of the last couple of years in Oregon for very obvious reasons. People tend to perceive reality when it's happening around them. Most of the time. Obviously, we have issues around affordability that are also high on Oregonians' radar. Cost of healthcare, cost of housing are the next two items on the list. But look down here at the very bottom. The amount you pay in taxes and the economy and unemployment. No more than about 1/3 of Oregonians viewing those as a very serious problem. So essentially, you see in these numbers the dynamic where people are willing to say, yes, I would be willing to pay a little bit more money out of my pocket to address some of these issues that are at the very top of the list. I would also note climate change, although you'll see it third from the bottom in this ranking, 55% rated an extremely or very serious problem. The intensity of concern around that issue at 25%, rated it extremely serious, matches the cost of healthcare. What's going on here is what Representative Power mentioned a few minutes ago, which is deep political polarization on this issue. Democrats view it as enormously urgent. Republicans are actively dismissive. But in Oregon, overall, when we add independents into the mix, we end up with a broad majority that does see this as a concern that needs to be addressed. And as you'll see on the next slide, a number of these perceptions have shifted over the last couple of years. Risk of wildfires is up 29 points in just the last 2 years, from January of 2017, with only 42% of Oregonians rated it a very serious problem. In that same span of time, concern about the economy and unemployment is down 21 points, dropping from 48 down to 27%. So again, this balance between should we use some of the benefits of a strong economy to try to address climate change, numbers are moving much more in the direction of saying, yes, this is something that we can afford to do. So in the wake of the session, we wanted to understand how people viewed not just the substantive issues around climate change and climate policy, but some of the tactics that were employed to stall it. And obviously what it took was Republican senators walking out. That is not something that most Oregonians embrace as a strategy for handling policy disputes. 41% offer support for the walkouts, 56% oppose it, including almost half of Oregonians, 49% who strongly oppose it. Now, yes?
Was that by Republican versus Democrat?
An excellent question. As you'll see here, thank you for the transition. At the top of the slide here, you'll see the numbers by party. And of course, it is deeply partisan. Democrats hate the walkout, Republicans are in favor of it. But what I want you to note here is that while only 11% of Democrats support the walkouts, 21% of Republicans oppose them. So 1 in 5 Oregonians that are registered Republicans are saying they don't want to see this employed. Twice as many as there are Democrats saying, yes, I support this as an approach. Independents evenly split. And so given the partisan mix of voters statewide, that's what yields this majority opposition to using walkouts as a tactic. And we also tested a basic description of HB 2020. This was language that we had used in our polling in advance of the session when we were looking at whether Oregonians supported what the legislation would do. In the wake of the session, we slightly modified the language to reflect the ultimate shape of that legislation, including noting that the cost would be $490 million per year. So we are not dodging the economic impacts of these actions. And without saying this is the bill that was just debated, but basically just saying this is a policy. You think this is a good idea for Oregon? After the session, 62% continue to support it. Just 33% opposed it. So a ratio of 2 to 1. And note that if you look at those who feel most strongly about the issue, 43% offer strong support, 26% offer strong opposition. So a 17-point margin in our favor in terms of the intensity of people's feelings about this issue. Now there are demographic differences, of course. The biggest ones are partisan and ideological. Democrats, self-identified liberals, overwhelmingly supported, 90% plus in favor. Independents and moderates, also solid majorities in favor, 55 to 38 among independents, 68 to 26 among moderates, and then conservatives are opposed. But again, the intensity of opposition among conservatives and Republicans is less than the intensity of support among Democrats and liberals. There are also differences by the type of community people live in. Cities, suburban areas, small towns, or rural areas. We have majority support in cities, the suburbs, and small towns, and voters are evenly split in rural areas. Now, since this legislation has been debated, there has been a lot of conventional wisdom that says this is something that reflects an urban-rural divide. Rural voters don't like it, urban voters do. But in fact, all that is telling us, really, is that there are more conservative voters in rural areas than there are in urban ones. We analyzed the data, breaking out support among city and suburban Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, and then in rural areas and small towns, the same partisan split. And what you'll see here is that partisanship explains everything. If you are a Democrat who lives in a rural area or small town, you are overwhelmingly in favor. If you are a Republican who lives in downtown Portland, we can find one, you are heavily opposed. So it is simply the fact that we have more conservative voters in rural areas and more Democrats in urban areas that are leading to this urban-rural split. It is not, in fact, the idea that rural people, regardless of ideology, are rising up in opposition. There's some gender and age differences, as we often see. Younger female voters most supportive, older male voters about evenly divided, but solid leads among every other age and gender cohort. And importantly, because of a lot of the fictions that were conveyed about the economic impact of the legislation, there is no difference whatsoever by household income. Oregonian voters who live in households with incomes under $50,000 per year are every bit as supportive as those in households with six-figure incomes. We saw the same dynamic, by the way, in Washington State in the vote on Initiative 1631. Despite $30 million being spent telling people this was going to increase their household costs, lower income voters were actually more supportive than more affluent voters in the wake of that campaign, because they also suffer the impacts of climate change and would benefit from a lot of what the measure had to offer. One final note from the poll data here, we also asked people how they would feel about doing business with an Oregon company that opposed the kind of climate action that we are talking about here. And by a pretty decisive margin, almost 4 to 1, Oregonians told us they would be less likely to do business with a company that was coming down in opposition to this kind of climate action. Obviously, a lot depends on what companies we're talking about, but it does show that Oregonians are willing to vote not just with their ballots, but also to some extent with their wallets on this issue. So the final few points I want to make draw from a range of surveys that we have conducted nationally around issues on climate change and climate policy. Our Oregon data reflects a lot of the same trends that we'll talk about at the national level here, but I thought it might be good just to step back and talk about what things are moving the public today when we talk about these issues. Over the course of the last couple of years, not just here in Oregon, but across the country, we have seen a significant increase in public concern about global warming. It was plummeted from about 2006 until about 3 or 4 years ago as the issue became more partisan. But over the last couple of years, concern is going up among Democrats, among Independents, and Republicans. And this is a big part of the reason why. You saw those numbers about concern about wildfires here in Oregon. If you live in parts of the country that are affected by hurricanes, by droughts, by floods, it is hard to find some place where the tangible impacts of climate change are not being felt today, and being felt in some pretty dramatic ways. And as concern about those issues has risen, the ability to deny the reality of what's going on diminishes, and the urgency of doing something about it starts to rise. For many years, we saw that messaging around extreme weather didn't really move people. It sounded like we were trying to scare them. But that is no longer the case. It is now reflecting the reality that they see outside their doors. As is the case on almost any environmental or conservation issue, the notion that we need to take action today in order to leave a legacy for future generations is really important. The public may be ambivalent about whether they themselves are likely to be harmed by climate change in their lifetime, but overwhelmingly they believe that their children and their grandchildren will. And so keeping that future focus and saying that what we do today is going to impact our kids and our grandkids can be a very important message, and something that's a little more positive and affirming as well. We don't want to talk about the tragedy that's going to befall them. We want to talk about making sure that they can enjoy the things that made this such a great place to live today, a generation from now. In general, across the board, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans embrace making a shift from fossil fuels to clean energy. There are lots of reasons for this that have nothing whatsoever to do with its impact on climate change, but there is real bipartisan unity in the notion that we need to make this transition. And so messages which talk about that kind of clean energy future are highly appealing. As are those that speak to the health impacts of making this change. When we reduce greenhouse gases and carbon emissions, we also inevitably are going to reduce lots of other co-pollutants that go into the air from the same sources that have all kinds of negative impacts on public health, particularly kids. People hear about rising rates of respiratory illnesses among young people. A lot of them see it in their own communities, and of course, disproportionately, low-income communities and communities of color are impacted by air pollution. Messaging that talks about making those changes is highly beneficial. The jobs that result from making a transition to clean energy are also a very strong point from a messaging perspective. And it's important when we talk about these jobs that we make clear that we're not talking about a bunch of engineers in white coats sitting in labs somewhere with advanced degrees. These are white-collar jobs, they are blue-collar jobs, they are administrative jobs, all up and down the economic ladder. They are jobs that can't be outsourced because they are creating new sources of energy right here in Oregon. And so emphasizing that, the economic benefits that come from these investments is critical. When we talk about the other side, the costs, there is a split between what voters perceive is likely to happen in the short term and what's likely to happen in the long term. They recognize that if we're changing our energy infrastructure, it's going to require an effort, and there may be some costs making those investments in the near term. But they are overwhelmingly confident that over the long term, we will pay less if we are using clean energy as opposed to continuing our dependence on fossil fuels and their infrastructure. And they know that you don't get something for nothing. That if you want to achieve the positive changes we're talking about here, yes, it may cost them something out of their pockets. In the same polling where we see 60% support the suite of policies in HB 2020, those same voters are telling us, yes, I realize I may have to pay a little bit more, and I support it nonetheless. So that's important to remember. Voters understand that we're spending a little money now to get something that's going to be very beneficial in the future. A few final points about messaging to conservatives. Because this issue is so deeply polarized across partisan lines, we have to realize if we want to try to build broader coalitions that we need to speak to conservative voters in ways that reflect their values and their perspectives, and the fact that they may be a little bit more skeptical about the need for climate action in the near term. One of the things we've consistently seen is that you can have messaging that talks about the climate benefits of the kinds of policy changes we're talking about, as long as you make clear the other co-benefits that go along with it. Everything we've just talked about. Cleaner air, better jobs, long-term cost savings. If making an impact on climate change is a part of that message, it still resonates with conservatives as long as we're spelling out some of those co-benefits that go with it. The notion that we are creating domestic sources of energy that reduce our reliance on imported energy from foreign sources also is a critical message for conservative voters. And the flip side of that, framing clean energy as energy that is American-made or made right here in Oregon, also is a message that can help us to bridge that partisan divide. Finally, I'll just leave you with this summary here. I can see the cameras coming out for this one. This is a list of words and phrases that, based on a range of polls, we typically advise emphasizing, and then some that we recommend trying to avoid in communicating with the general public around climate policy. I would note this is not a one-to-one correspondence here. In other words, the words on the right are not replacing the ones immediately to the left, but the ones on the left are ones that are best left unsaid, and the ones on the right are good ones to focus on. A lot of the difference here is avoiding technical language and jargon. The public doesn't understand anything about allowances, cap and trade, or low carbon fuel standards, permits. What they want to hear about are the benefits that we will ultimately deliver, the way their lives will be better if these policies are enacted. Outcomes, not process. That's the most important thing to remember when you're communicating about these kinds of policy changes. So, with that,
I got a statement.
yeah.
Just so you know, the Democrats walked out in 1996 and went out and hid because they were in the minority and they didn't mess with it. So
It was in 2000.
I forget the exact date, but my friend Dan Gardner let him out.
And so here's the thing.
So I'm
If
just saying.
somebody, if somebody does something that you know is wrong, and then you do it yourself, that does not justify. I mean, that's a child's argument. If you knew it was wrong when your opponent did it, you sure as hell knew it was wrong when you did it 10 years later, or 19 years later.
Thank you so much, Dave. I'm going to open it up to questions. So it seems like we've got some. You can ask it the whole panel or specific panelists. I'll do my best to pass the mic off. So I think you stood up first in the back.
My name is Karin. I'm with the Confederate Tribes of Indian Reservation. I guess one of the things, we support the climate change moving forward. And, I think a lot of the information is really good here. But one of the things that I've heard, and we're evaluating it ourselves, our tribe is, because it's certainty. And the reason it's economic certainty, simply because if you get the companies or the industries to work with you to protect the environment, then you are not only looking at jobs and clean bills, but you're looking at the environment so that there is certainty for both. And I know I discussed this with our water commission, and they said, well, economic certainty means they're going to do this. And I said, no, not unless if we bring everything together. Then economic certainty is not only just for the job, but it's for the environment. But it's, again, how you word things. And so we haven't developed any wording yet, but we are definitely looking at it because of the information I read on California about industry, car industry, making changes for economic certainty. So I think there's more wording or things we should be looking at besides all of the things that are listed there, because that's Trump's and the Republicans' thing is economics. And we're not against economics, but we are concerned about the impact it's going to have on the environment. And I was really pleased that, Don was there to help make sure that the tribes were involved, because I think it's important to make sure that the tribes, we've got 9 tribes in the state of Oregon, and they should know and support this legislation.
I really, yes. Thank you so much for saying that. I totally agree, and I think I know that the states that have been moving for this have actually, their economy has grown, and so there's a lot to be said about how this is going to help us down the road and create new careers, new clean energy jobs. But again, like Dave said, up and down the whole ladder of what we'll be creating for our economy and keeping it local. I have no idea who to raise their hand next.
Let's go back and forth.
Yeah, let's go with Dawn. John, sorry.
I guess, I'm sorry to introduce a note of pessimism, but I'm a physicist, the 1970s, I taught a course for a number of years called Environmental Physics, and a lot of the course was based on a seminal paper at the time showing that global warming was something that had already been going on for 50 years or more. And it was eerily predictive of what has happened since. In particular, one of the very strong predictions was the melting of the global ice. Global ice is melting. Walrus is dead. Walruses will be extinct within a few years. Polar bears maybe also. What my concern is that even with the measures that we're taking, it's nearly too late. I'm not optimistic that even if we are able to politically pass the sort of things that the Oregon 2020 bill did, that in 50 years our children are still not going to be suffering from a world that's really very different from what it is now. There's from my own research, let me just say one more quick thing. The only thing that I can see that really could make a major change is to just get rid of fossil fuels more or less entirely. And the only way that I know to do that has any chance of success is solar energy. Solar energy today is way too expensive, and both in terms of resources and money and everything else. But we have not invested in research on really cheap things. There's some things like amorphous semiconductors that could be rolled out like wallpaper that are not working yet, but they're so close that we could make solar energy. And solar energy could actually, believe it or not, produce most of the energy needs of this nation if we could make it so that it is cheap and reliable. And
John, this is Representative Howard. I couldn't agree with you more. I have a 3-year-old, and I want to remind us, this bill is a tremendous undertaking because it serves as a backstop for all of the work that we do now and in the future. We have not been meeting our climate reduction goals as a state, as a nation, as a world. But we also haven't been tracking it across all of our sectors. We know, and we have charts upon charts upon charts showing us that we're off. But there's no underlying mechanism to get us there, to make us shift in that direction, which is why I believe a cap and invest, where we are taking dollars from the entities and the sectors that are contributing to the problem and reinvesting in local communities, is the better way than a flat carbon tax, which sends a signal but also does not help us reach any sort of endpoint. And I want to remind us, Oregon stands to benefit from these kinds of policies because we will probably be a climate refuge state. We have a fairly stable year-round temperature. Our issue is going to be water. And as we look ahead to the next 2 decades, many of our communities relying upon snowmelt, which is erratic at best now. Most of our state is in varying different degrees of drought during the summer. So the way that the world is changing around us, we know it's been happening for more than just a couple decades. It's going to get worse before we have the resources and the political will across the world to change. But my Republican colleagues drive me up a wall. They say, well, China and India are not doing their part. If a democratic society with people who engage locally cannot fix the issue, how can we expect other countries that are authoritarian or not particularly functioning and have no basic infrastructure to solve the problem either? I believe we can do this.
Go to this side of the room.
So, my name is John Wickham. I'm the Beaverton Education Association, also a 6th grade science teacher. And when I talk to my conservative friends and family, I always get stuck on that they agree climate change is happening, but they don't necessarily believe that it's caused by humans. And I'm telling you, that's what I hear. They say it's natural. They say it's natural cycles, and so their concern is on the short-term economic costs. So I need examples of where economic development is occurring with new clean energy. I need examples. that I can come back and say, look at this country, look at this state.
I'll just say, I'm based in Oakland, California. For the last 10 years, we have had a cap and trade system in place. 13 years, 2006 it was passed, signed by Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Over that period of time, California's economy, I believe, has probably grown more than just about anywhere else in the country, at the same time that we have been reducing our emissions. There is a laboratory just to your southern border that shows that we can make this work. Now, in polling, if you tell Oregonians, we should do this because California did, there is no less effective argument that would possibly present to me. So, as a general principle, perhaps not the model will hold up, but if you are having conversations with people, you can say, look, this is not radical. This is not something that has never been tried anywhere. It is happening right next to us. British Columbia also has a system, has been doing quite well. So there is lots of data to show that the dire predictions of economic catastrophe that almost always come from the fossil fuel industry, by the way, not just on climate change, but on clean water legislation, on clean air legislation, it is almost always a factor of 20 by which they are inflating the negative economic impacts. There's a great, EDF has done a great study which sort of shows energy industry projections versus reality of these kinds of policy changes. So that's the example that I would probably hold up.
Let's go in the back, purple sweater. That's you, right? Or I saw your arm, sorry. Yeah.
I'm Cal Felicity, and I'm from Karin County, in Reyna Falls. I have a question about jobs. You talk about jobs, although you say that Oregonians aren't moved by the process of moving clean energy into the job sector, it is actually a way to create clean environment by creating those jobs. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of those jobs that could be done in our county. Now, where is a list of those jobs coming from? And what kind of information can I point people to that say, these are real jobs that you can do in this place, and we're going to bring some of them. The promises out there with no facts. And conservative counties, we need some facts.
And no promise of labor rights either.
Right.
So I think if you want to talk with some of your colleagues and your neighbors about the last session, I know we don't have a list of supporters up on the screen anymore, but there was a reason why our largest labor union around building and manufacturing came on board. This bill, the last version of the bill, had the strongest labor protections of any environmental legislation in the history of Oregon. It had assurances in there that jobs funded through government projects would go to companies that had good union practices, peace agreements, benefits. What this means on the private sector largely goes to energy efficiency projects. And they're not big, sexy jobs, which is why we didn't end up talking about them a ton. And they're also diffuse. But if you followed me afterwards, in the economic study that we did at the very beginning of session, this year, feels like it was a year and a half ago, just in January, we had a frame that showed where jobs were expected to be created. It's everything from solar, wind, but it also means fixing people's roofs, installing better insulation so that they are so that their energy bills are going to be lowered on a month-to-month basis. It's repairing windows and doing those kinds of projects that our state actually already does in partnership with our utilities, and some of the utilities fund separately as well. And the map showed, and I'm not surprised you didn't see this if you didn't, because the Republicans were not exactly sharing it widely. The bulk of I would say just rural energy security jobs came in the southern part of Oregon and along the eastern Oregon portion. That's because there's a lot of opportunity. My colleague Representative Marsh has been hammering us to do more for home upgrades. A good portion of Oregon's housing stock is mobile homes. They are in desperate need of energy efficiency upgrades to make more livable and healthier. So that equates to not just jobs for local communities that can't be outsourced, But that also means seniors living on fixed incomes are going to have healthier indoor air and lower utility bills. Those are the kind of jobs coming out of this program.
Right here.
This is for Senator Power. So the question is, what's going to be different in February than last year?
That's a great question.
So you've got to get one more vote in the Democratic caucus, and you got to keep the Republicans from walking out. So I understand you've got ballot measures as some pressure from the Republicans. Not sure whether you know that'll work. Are you discussing possible changes with a couple of Republicans? So you only need two. What is going to be different in February, and what are you guys doing to do it, and what can we do to impact it so when the session opens, this has a better chance than last year?
Great question.
Yeah, super good questions. It's representative. Senator Taylor is my senator, but she's also terrific and a great champion for this. No, it's fine. Thanks for the question. Leading into this issue, there's a lot going on. And I think that feels murky and uncertain right now. And that's okay, because in the short session, we literally have nothing to lose. At the end of session, when the Republicans walked out, they used the clock against us. They had two things that they used fully to their advantage more than once. And they were sort of dirty tricks. But they have them again at their disposal. The first was when we set short sessions, and put those into the Constitution, they have hard end dates. So they literally had a clock they could run out on us. And the second is this supermajority quorum to show up and do business. At the end of this past session, there was a lot on the line, and you heard my colleagues touting our great work around paid family leave, the driver's card legislation, and driver's licenses that we passed. Those were all waiting for senators to come back and finish. And if they had not, they would have died on the Senate side. And then there were the entirety of our budget bills. We're all still waiting Senate approval. There were literally dozens upon dozens and dozens of bills passed within those last 2 days. And that looming threat of a massive amount of work with huge coalitions of people and people's lives on the line around these resulted in the Senate deciding to jettison the bill. It was not my call to make. If I could have done it over again, I would have killed everything, because the Republicans broke democracy, and I would not have let them get away with it. I think when it comes down to our values as Democrats, we're in it together. And the clean energy jobs was just what the Republicans put on the line, and I expect them to do it again, because it worked. They had a list of things that they wanted dead, and they had a list of things that they insisted that Senate Democrats not pass if they came back to the building. And you know what? That list kept on growing day by day, and the longer that they stayed out of the state. I fully expect, and as a House member, I don't know, I'm not privy to these kinds of fun conversations that I'm sure my Senate colleagues are having right now, but I'd expect the Republicans feel emboldened and probably have a list that they put back out again to say, if we're going to come back in the short session, here are the things that you cannot do. I would be shocked if they weren't gun reform and gun safety and climate legislation. And then probably a long list of other things they don't like that Democrats can do, because you all helped elect a supermajority in the state. I feel very strongly that we go back into this short session and this is what we're getting done. We have some budget reallocations and things that we could do, but I can't think of a single piece of legislation that more concretely impacts the Oregon we are today, the Oregon we are tomorrow, the Oregon we're going to be next summer, and the Oregon for our kids. So we get this done first. And if they decide to walk out again, we know that that actually doesn't help them in their re-election campaign. And we've got a governor who's got our back on this, who is working diligently and directing her staff agencies to explore all possible options that she has at her disposal. That kind of blunt force tool is not anybody's preferred approach. But if the same thing happens in Oregon in February, and the Republicans make the decision to not engage in a collaborative, understand that we will have deep partisan differences around any climate legislation. But if they decide to not engage in good faith again this time around, and we can't get this through, then we have to double our efforts for November, back the Renew Coalition's efforts around clean air, and take it to the people, and I'm ready for it.
More questions?
My name is Henry Exurgian, Multnomah County Democrats, and also House District 50. So I think there's going to be a lot of disinformation. Obviously, we're going to be battling, but one of the aspects that I found particularly distasteful was the secret. What was happening in secret, especially with my Senator Mona Sanderson. We went down to try to see her a couple of times. She would not see us, her own constituents. She would not see her own constituencies. And later on, I found out that she was, meeting with lobbyists from Boeing, and obviously was being lobbied to somehow kill this bill in secret under the guise of something else, right? Pretending. So my concern is, how do we fight that? How do we fight the secret lobby?
I mean, we are fighting it. It happened. We know about it. It's not a secret. So we're figuring it out. That's part of politics.
I was going to say primaries.
She's not running again.
No, she's not.
I think that we need to have, I think that this is a big part of how we hold people accountable, how we not only hold people accountable, but then later how we defend our wins. And at the very least, like in the farm worker and Latinx community, we found that we have to identify people who are going to be our real champions for us, and that when people in our that are representing us aren't doing the thing, that we got to find someone who does.
I'll just add to that, we have, for a while, we have stepped up, I think, in really focusing on the reform needed to make sure that big corporations, big fossil fuel companies can't buy our elections, can't buy their way in the decision makers, that they can't be the only people that are heard. There's clearly an issue with our state in being that our elected officials are per capita given more money by big corporations than in any other state in the entire country. And that is not an accident. It gets them what they want. And we need to change that system. There will be something on the ballot also next year which will change our constitution. Right now we can't have contribution limits. And so we need to change that, and we need to move forward on truly having a democracy that represents what the people want and not what corporations want. I haven't gone over here for a really long time.
My name is Karin, and I'm the secretary of the Environmental Caucus. Cal is our vice chair. And we have to fight industry. And the way we do that is with people power. So the Environmental Caucus really needs to get out into Clatsop County and support Tiffany. We need to get down the coast in Arnie Rowland's district, because it's not just cap and trade. It's forest bills, it's other environmental bills that are being blocked by conservative Democrats, or Democrats who listen and get paid by the industries, all the industries. We have work to do. So I encourage everybody who's not in a caucus to join the Environmental Caucus and to help us organize. What are our major talking points? What are we going to say in Clatsop County that will resonate in Clatsop County and in Coos County, so that we can really get the things we need to deal with climate emergency? We need to make sure that our Democrats in those counties feel okay about being visible on this issue, which is so very important. We talked about that in the rural organizing session yesterday. Cap and trade in California has not reduced emissions very much. So I agree, don't use California cap and trade. They have passed other legislation, which is more important, that has reduced And that has caused the price of gas to go up so much. That's their bill on biofuels and their bill on fuels in general. So we need more parts to the puzzle. But cap and trade gets us investment. The PCUN, you're right on. We need those investments. Nobody else is going to pay to make energy efficiency and heat pumps in motorhomes and low-income housing. That's what we need the investment money for. So it's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the only piece. So we just have to organize and make sure that people understand this on a personal level. That we have to stop the polluters. That we need our healthy air and healthy water, because we need a healthy future for the climate. Thanks.
It's 11 o'clock.
11? Okay, we're going to go try and get through a bunch. Go ahead.
I'm just going to be real quick. I would love to see a sheet that maybe you could create that shows how you would, I'm trying to do this quick. Basically, something that shows how you're going to deal with clean energy and then versus how you save money. So equate those so that we have the talking points depend upon who we're talking to.
Yeah.
Maybe that exists, I just don't know about it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning. Jody Getzville-Parker, I'm with the laborers. I'm impacted deeply by the climate. We know that. We were very supportive of 2020. Thank you for your work on that. Frustrated by the lockout, clearly. And I kind of think differently. I think we need people and we need industry. I think we need each other. At the end of the day, we all need each other. We got to find a way to talk about these things and push this legislation through. Because the coasties, I have a cousin that's a coastie. She doesn't get much. She doesn't get anything about it. But I understand her passions, and I would like to find a pipeline, a bridge, to have those communications with her. I keep struggling with that. I would ask, anytime that we talk about bringing these issues forward, that because they are a different style of building than what my community is used to building, we have protections, labor protections, wage protections, apprenticeship standards for buildings when they're complete. You're absolutely correct. You don't need much labor power to keep a solar farm running. When you're doing wind power, you are not going to have the workforce that we see. But where we come in is we train your communities to go in and build these and to support them. And I would always ask that we listen to labor, organized labor, and listen to us when we talk about apprenticeship standards, diversity goals, and wage protections. Because when we bring that to the table, all boats rise. At the end of the day, your dentists are going to get paid when they go to your children, when they go to your teeth. You're going to go to the grocery store, you're going to buy more groceries. It's a deeper impact, and anytime you see me, come talk to me. This is where I'm at. So.
He's been super patient. We're going to go really fast because it is 11, so.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex. You can refer to me as the EV nerd. And I have to put in a shameless plug for electric vehicles as probably the lowest hanging fruit that we have left in this transportation emissions, battle. And I mean, transportation as a sector is our #1 source of emissions in Oregon and worldwide. And there's all this talk about transportation costs going up as part of cap and trade, but there's very little, I think, messaging, and I think there should be more messaging around the fact that the average Oregonian can save $1,000 a year of post-tax income and gas spending from switching from a gas-powered car to an electric-powered car. That's because our electricity is really cheap and our gas is really expensive. And guess how many jobs there are besides gas station attendants in Oregon fueled by the petroleum industry? Zero. Zero petroleum manufacturers in Oregon, meaning that $6 billion a year that we spend, this is federal information on the EIA, $6 billion a year that our state spends on gasoline is going out of state. That is a job-killing tax. We should be talking about that as a job killer, right? And then to my friend here who's a science teacher, you know, you can immediately say to folks, if you switch over to a new car, not only are there great rebates available, which the Oregon EV state rebate, which is getting us part of the way there, is awesome, but we have to think about, you know, wrapping that into this just transition movement, which is, you know, from my understanding, is more of an immense opportunity movement, because we don't have to convince low-income folks who've been on the wrong end of these tailpipes for their whole lives to get this infrastructure. We just have to get them the money and the means doing so. So I think if we shift this messaging a little bit more towards what's attainable and what's addressable and what will put money in our pocket now, not just once you get a job in a year, then maybe we can switch this.
We'll go try and go really quick because we are after 11 o'clock, so I think we have hands back there.
One of the things that I have not heard spoken to or referred to is the super funds for the nuclear waste that's happening. Are they being addressed? Thank you.
That's not part of this program because nuclear energy wouldn't qualify under any of our renewable standards. And Oregon, it'd take me a second to remember it in my brain, but Oregon passed a ban on new nuclear siting facilities back in the 80s or 90s. But happy to talk more about that offline. I know we didn't get to a couple questions. If anybody wants to approach us up here, thank you for coming. I hope you found this helpful and informative.